Welcome back, Professor Nalapat, to the Gateway House monthly video cast. You came here to us 4 years ago and you gave us an insider's view of what Mr. Modi's foreign policy would be should he become the Prime Minister. He won the election and we are now at the end of his first term. If you put a perfect location pin on his plans, which you did the last time, what would you say has defined his foreign policy? And I would say nothing reveals his foreign policy aspirations more than the invitation for the chief guest of India's Republic Day.
You know, Manjeet, the problem that Modi has faced has been self-created. And that is that the man has been far too reliant on the bureaucracy. And as a consequence, way too much of the input he is getting on various issues comes from within the bureaucracy. And this has been a problem because he looks only at a much narrower range of options than he would have done had he looked at a much more broader segment of society to consult. Modi as chief minister used to consult a very broad segment. Frankly, Modi as prime minister has functioned in an entirely different manner, and he has given far more prominence to the bureaucracy than Modi as chief minister. Modi as chief minister used to get input from a variety of people. He used to form policy conclusions and he used to tell the bureaucracy to implement these conclusions. Today, Modi as prime minister, basically from my very limited understanding of what's happening, spends a lot of time with the bureaucracy, and a lot of the policy formulations are those which go through the bureaucracy matrix.
And this has had an impact on his choice of chief guest for Republic Day?
I'm hearing, for example, that you're going to get the South African president. Frankly, I would have I still want Vice President Mike Pence to come.
In place of President Donald Trump, who turned down the invitation.
Exactly. For the simple reason that, look, if you're looking at the Indo-Pacific, which is a very significant body of water, if you're looking at space, which is a very significant area of competition in the future, India by itself cannot really hope to dominate even the Indian Ocean. The United States cannot hope to remain ahead entirely by itself. But the United States, India, Japan, Australia, Vietnam, the entire body of the Indo-Pacific can be, in a sense, primacy can be established through an alliance of these countries. From this point of view, Mike Pence, in my view, if you talk, let's say, for example, of an Indian embassy abroad, you may have a political appointee as the ambassador. The ambassador does a lot of diplomatic work, he creates a lot of goodwill, but the deputy chief of mission does a lot of the day-to-day work. In my view, Mike Pence is the deputy chief of mission of the Trump administration. He's an extremely influential figure, and with his Hudson Institute speech, it's very clear he's also a significant geopolitical thinker. So if I had any say in the matter, I will say, let's get Mike Pence, let's try and get Mike Pence. The problem is we have the bureaucracy, and the bureaucrats will say, oh, but he's only vice president. But look, you had the crown prince of the UAE. He was he was the crown prince, but you invited him. So you have created a precedent of inviting the second in command. It was a brilliant choice by the Prime Minister, entirely by the Prime Minister, to invite the Crown Prince of the UAE as a chief guest. I hope the Prime Minister will shake himself free from the bureaucratic tentacles that are surrounding him and invite Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States, to come as a chief guest. That would be my advice to Prime Minister Modi.
So, Monu, 4 years ago, you had also said that Mr. Modi would focus on 4 countries for India's strategic investment. One is the United States, China, Japan, and Russia. So, continuing friends, rivals, old allies, and new allies. Has he done so, and how has that worked for India?
Well, actually, you must say that Modi has had a certain direction in foreign policy, and we have seen a Modi doctrine now taking shape. The only problem with the Modi doctrine is, once again, Modi has handed over the actual operation of the doctrine to the bureaucracy.
What is the Modi doctrine in your view?
For example, the United States. you have a relationship with the United States which is security based. So the United States and India have a strong security relationship. With China, you have a strong commercial relationship. Let's not forget, Modi has made it much easier for Chinese business to operate in India, much easier for visas to be given than any prime minister in the past has done since the 1960s. Now, but the problem is, so far the United States is concerned, I'm sorry to say, till today, the Prime Minister has not been able to get all the US Foundation agreements signed. Becca, for example, is still waiting signature. Some bureaucrat somewhere must have put some little comment here, don't sign this, or sign it under this, or make some adjustment here. So the result is, frankly, that whether it is on the security front with the US, where, frankly, India should aspire as being one of the 6 eyes.
Yes.
The 5 eyes should be expanded and India should be the 6th eye. It's going very slow. The commercial relationship with China is going very slow. I'll give you an example of technology. Chinese 5G technology is state of the art. Huawei. If Chinese technology comes into India, it can compete with American players, it can compete with other players, and as a result, the consumers will have greater, if I may say so, competition.
They're already here.
Well, they're not
Alibaba is
here.
already here.
They're not here for 5G.
They're here with e-commerce.
I'm saying that, the fact
The
is,
actual technology.
whether it is Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon, we are a digital colony of 2 states in the US, Washington State and California. The fact is that the only country that can compete with this is China. So if they come in and these 2 giants compete, maybe there'll be enough space for Indian players to expand. So that is again something which frankly needs to be done. But both in the commercial relationship with China and the security relationship with the United States, I am confident that Prime Minister Modi has a very correct perspective. But the implementation has been halting, it's been slow, it's been hyper cautious, because again I repeat, the Prime Minister has given too much of powers to the bureaucracy to implement his doctrine, and frankly, I'm not even sure they understand it, I'm not even sure they fully appreciate it, but the reality of life is that therefore we have a too cautious US policy and a too cautious China policy.
What about Japan and Russia?
Look, the Japanese are very important for the Indo-Pacific. In my view, India, the United States, Japan, principally Australia, etc., we should have primacy in the waters of the Indo-Pacific. No, India should have the same policy that Britain had in continental Europe. No one country in continental Europe should be allowed to dominate continental Europe. That was British policy. So the British alliance system was structured like that. We should have an alliance system that no one country should be allowed to dominate the Eurasian continent. We should ensure that our security alliance system is aligned in such a way that no one country can dominate the Eurasian landmass. Because once a country dominates the Eurasian landmass, in a matter of 15 years, that country will dominate the world. And frankly, we don't need a unipolar world anymore. Unipolar world is an extremely insecure world. It's an extremely, frankly, unstable world. We need a multipolar world. And for that, you have to avoid any country becoming dominant in the Eurasian landmass. United States is receding. United States is a declining power. But some other powers are advancing.
China.
Well, I'm not going to name countries. And we have to ensure that no country can dominate the Eurasian landmass, and that is where a security architecture comes.
And Japan and Russia?
Japan is very important, as I said. Russia is also very important.
He has reached out, Mr. Modi and Mr. Abe are almost best of friends, personal friends. How has that played out? Japan has given India a lot of money in low-cost loans for India's infrastructure build-out. We have never seen Japan participate in India like this.
I'd like to remind you that way back, I think it was in 1992 or something, the Narasimha Rao government reached out to Taiwan and Japan to get some money because it was in a bad way. The Taiwanese president at that time, I think a chap called Lee Deng-hui, he said, where is India? Who's India? Get lost. The Japanese helped us big time. Today the Prime Minister went to Abe-san, his old friend. And I'm happy to say Abe-san delivered big time. From $50 billion, that special facility has been extended to $75 billion. That's not, pocket change. So the Japanese have always been good friends of India. And Abe-san especially has many Indian friends. He's one Japanese who likes to meet foreigners. Many Japanese, I'm sorry to say, they hate to meet even other Japanese. Forget about foreigners. But here's a man who loves foreigners and who loves Indians. So yes, the relationship is strong. So far as Russia is concerned, I am very clear. We made a mistake in signing the S-400 deal with Russia. I am not sure that we are going to get a waiver from the United States on the S-400 deal. Recently, I was in Tokyo and we had an India, Japan, US discussion held by the Hudson Institute. I argued very strongly for India and Iran to maintain and to keep normal relations. I didn't make any argument about India-Russia defense relationship because frankly, you can't have a situation which is good for India and which is a strong and stronger security relationship with the US coexisting with more and more arms and defense equipment being bought from the Soviet Union. In my view, it was a mistake. We should have tried for THAAD, we should have tried for Patriot, we should not have gone in for the S-400.
Doesn't that make us very dependent on one country?
We have been dependent on Russia for quite some time, and eventually, for example, if the Lockheed guys are telling us transfer the entire production line to India, we'll help develop our own production line. We have the Mahindras, we have the Tatas, we have the Birlas, we have the Reliance, so many other very good L&T as a good company, so many companies that can be big in the defense space. And unfortunately, we had this ridiculous policy of depending only on the public sector for defense space. The result is we are crucially dependent on foreign countries. But I would say very frankly, Manjeet, India and the US, we have to move together in defense. And that is not possible so long as you have an outsized dependence on Moscow. I'm not saying cut down with Moscow. Let's say we spend $10 billion every year on Russian items. Just transfer that money from defense equipment to, let's say, oil and other equipment. For example, nuclear reactors. We give $10 billion to Russia every year, but not in defense. So I'd like to say this continued, we cannot go in these two boats. A strong defense relationship with the US and continued dependence on Russia, because these are contradictory boats. And I'm very sorry to say, so far as Iran is concerned, I defend totally our decision to buy oil from Iran. I'm a little sorry that some private companies in India are so scared of the US, they immediately stop buying Iran oil. I'm not going to name those companies, but they're so, the Americans didn't even say boo before they ran away from Iran. It's a mistake. And I'm glad that our public sector companies still are buying from Iran. I want us to buy as much Iranian crude as possible for as long as possible. But so far as Russia is concerned, I want us eventually to reduce defense purchases from Russia to zero. Keep a high level of purchases from Russia, but not defense purchases.
South Asia has been a central theme for Mr. Modi during his term. How has the relationships with our neighbors progressed, and how do you think things are going to look now that Pakistan has a new Prime Minister, Imran Khan? Is this going to change the complexion of the past 4 years of keeping Pakistan out and progressing with the rest of South Asia?
See, the point about Prime Minister Modi, he doesn't hold press conferences. He's not particularly fond of the media. The fact is, he has a very good policy towards South Asia. And from my limited understanding of the man, I think that policy is very clear and it's a brilliant policy. The Modi doctrine, as I understand it, is every South Asian country must respect India's core concerns. We have certain core concerns. We have no problem in their dealing with any other country. China, for example. But you have to respect India's core concerns. Now, whether it's Maldives, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it is Nepal, whether it is Pakistan, whether it is Bangladesh, Afghanistan. I think the Prime Minister has very silently and very subtly ensured that this message is communicated. I know that President Rajapaksa, former president, came to India about 2 months ago. I was involved in that visit. That's no secret. And he was made aware of India's core concerns. We were made aware of Sri Lankan concerns. And the reality is today in South Asia, every South Asian leader is aware of India's core concerns. And except for one country, Pakistan, they are all now in a situation where, in my view, they will ensure that the India's core concerns are not neglected. Even KP Oli of Nepal, I think he's an individual who I do not see him as anti-Indian. In fact, I'm sure he's going to come to India soon, and I'm sure he respects India's core concerns. So that is the Modi doctrine. Respect India's core concerns, and they will respect you. If you don't respect India's core concerns, we have no obligation to respect you. So far as Imran Khan is concerned, Imran is what I would call, very undiplomatically, we call them coconuts. Brown on the outside, white on the inside. Imran is an Englishman, like Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru was an Englishman. He was technically an Indian, actually an Englishman. Imran is the Nehru of Pakistan. He's technically a Pakistani, but effectively he's a Brit. And for example, his ex-brother-in-law, one of the most outstanding politicians, and in my view, he can be the second Jewish Prime Minister after Disraeli, with Zach Goldsmith, Imran's ex-brother-in-law, and they're still good friends of each other. Frankly, Imran, I think his heart is still somewhere in Britain and nowhere else. But
so
look,
what does that mean?
It means that he is just a face for the army and the ISI. That he will say all these sweet things, and he sincerely believes it. I don't believe Imran is insincere when he talks sweetness and light about India. But the man, poor man, has no power at all.
He's a puppet, as everybody says.
I wouldn't call him a puppet. I'd call him a puppet also has got some string, some attachment, moves around. Imran is helpless. He's completely helpless. So far as security is concerned, India policy is concerned, terror is concerned, Kashmir is concerned, nuclear button is concerned. He has no role at all. So it doesn't really matter. He is the beautiful face of Pakistan foreign policy. He will try and convince government of India, Mr. Modi, look at Inder Gujral, look at Atal Bihari Vajpayee, look at Manmohan Singh, how lovely these people were. They trusted us. Us means the ISI and the military speaking through the civilian government. They gave us so many concessions. Why don't you be like them? And look at me, Imran Khan. What a wonderful person I am. I love India. I love Sidhu. I love, and frankly, Imran Khan has got several good reasons, according to his his former wife's book, to be very friendly with India. Several good reasons who are, have been present in India. I'm not going to go into what those reasons are. But in any case, I just want to say that, the fact of the matter is, this man is only a face. He has no power whatsoever. So to expect him to make any paradigm shift is to expect, frankly, to chase after an illusion.
Let's switch to economics, Monu. India has done better at 7.5% growth now, 4.5 years after Mr. Modi came in. He came in at 4.5% growth, we're now at 7.5%. You had talked about a 15% GDP for India over the next 15 to 20 years before Mr. Modi came in. Are the structural changes now in place to achieve that goal? And will we become that middle-income country that we ought to be?
Again, I'd like to say, Narendra Modi is brilliant. Narendra Modi is visionary and far-seeing. The problem is, the instruments at hand are not. In my view, Modi has paid not enough attention towards ensuring a good team. His ministry is filled with Vajpayee's people. His administration is filled with Manmohan Singh's people, frankly. And both at Vajpayee's time, the proof of the pudding is 2004, what happened to the BJP, politically, they failed. Manmohan Singh, again the proof of the pudding is there in the extreme unpopularity of his government, they failed. The problem with Narendra Modi, a brilliant vision, but implemented in the wrong hands. I'll give you an example of demonetization. It's a brilliant idea. You change the currency so that you make everybody go and put money in a bank. You've got a better tracking system. But at the same time, cash economy is crucial to India. The entire Indian economy will slow down if you don't have cash. So you should have ensured that the Reserve Bank and the Finance Ministry kept liquidity high. You should have had vast stocks of cash ready. We had nothing. Even the ATMs had to be recalibrated because some individual, whom in my opinion, incredible that such a terrible error was made, the wrong size of note. So even ATMs could not work. So as a result, we were starved of liquidity and it was a disaster. From the demonetization onwards, frankly, Manjeet, I have a question mark as to whether Narendra Modi will come back as a Prime Minister or not. And I communicated that to individuals in Delhi the very day of the demonetization and subsequently. Why? It was a brilliant measure, very poorly implemented by the Reserve Bank, very poorly implemented by the Finance Ministry. Now, again, GST. A great idea. You have a single low rate. You exempt up to 5 crores people from GST. It would have been a brilliant idea. But you made it such a complex system. It's almost unworkable. It's unfileable. And now you have to make it workable as it goes along. Why? Because both in demonetization and in GST, the bureaucracy, front and center, has been given charge of the process. So you have a brilliant idea by the Prime Minister. He hands it to the bureaucracy, and by the time the results finally come out, they are very different from what the Prime Minister intends. So this is the problem. You're saying 7% is a great rate of growth. I'm disappointed. I never expected Modi's rate of growth to be anywhere below 9%. I expected by now it will be 12%. The fact that we're talking about 7.5% in my view is because Prime Minister Modi has, as I said, used frankly wrong tools, improper and imprecise tools to implement his ideas. If he had the kind of people, the brilliance of his ideas is not matched by the brilliance of those, or rather it's matched by the lack of brilliance and ability of those whom he has entrusted with the execution. And the sad fact is, no accountability. You have this disaster of demonetization. Every one of the people involved in demonetization has been promoted. Every one of them. It's incredible. You have this disaster of GST. The people responsible for that disaster have all been either retained in government or promoted. So you have no accountability for the disasters that you have created. So in my view, it's not that Prime Minister Modi is ruthless. It's not that Prime Minister Modi is too hard. Prime Minister Modi is too soft. He is too lacking in ruthlessness from my point of view.
Which brings us to our last question. Should Mr. Modi get a second term? If you were to look at the planetary charts, what would you forecast for India? What would you foresee?
Well, I hope he gets a better team, frankly. And I hope he gets a more efficient team. And I hope he goes back to what he was doing as Chief Minister of Gujarat, which is consulting a large number of people from across society in framing policies. Now that kind of consultation, frankly, is pro forma. Take, for example, the consultations on tax and business. Everybody is so terrified of a tax rate. Everybody is so terrified of some inquiry that nobody wants to say the truth, which is that, look, some of these ideas are absolutely unworkable. I was among the very few people who were very skeptical about demonetization and very skeptical about the way GST is implemented. People who used to speak to me privately about it in the same way, I was amazed. They go on television screen, oh, it's a brilliant idea. Why? Because they are scared. The reality is, Manjeet, you have to have minimum government. You have to bring down the power of government. The more powerful the government is, the less progress we make. The less powerful the government is, the more progress we make. And I'll tell you why in the context of entrepreneurship. You have a group of entrepreneurs who rely on their control of government, politicians, officials to get things done and to grow. You have a group of people, mostly younger people, who rely on brains, who rely on competence to get things done. These younger people, they are the ones who are in fact, in a sense, happy at Modi. Because all said and done, Modi has done a lot to ensure the system is cleaned up. He has done a lot to ensure that individual initiative get recognized. He has done a lot to make sure regulatory roadblocks get cleared. Some huge roadblocks are there, but Modi has done an awful lot. These are the people we should encourage. And for that, government must be pushed back. The fact is the Prime Minister of India has 15% power. The President of China has 60% power. The President of the United States has 10% power. Instead of trying to make the power of the Prime Minister from 15 to 25, he should bring it down to 10. And he should be true to his image of minimum government, maximum governance. Millions of young people in India, millions of brilliant people in India can create Amazons, Yahoos, Microsofts, all these treasures of the industrial landscape. You know, Jack Ma, you can have 20 Jack Ma's coming up in India only if government, you don't need to go through government. The entire class of entrepreneur who is succeeding because they have got politicians in their pockets, one pocket politicians, one pocket officials, this class deserve to be extinct, very frankly, or to run away to London or New York or Miami. As they are doing, and good riddance to them. The people who remain are the people who will depend on themselves, and Prime Minister Modi has got to be more like Chief Minister Modi if he gets a second term.
Manu, thank you very much. So we're sort of back to the future in some sense.
Exactly.
Mr. Modi as Prime Minister should be more like Mr. Modi as Chief Minister, and if he gets a second term, of which you worry, then he should go back to being what he was.
Manjeet, you're looking at someone who supported Narendra Modi from 2006. My problem with Narendra Modi is not that there's too much of Narendra Modi. There's too little of Narendra Modi in what is called the Modi government.
Thank you, Manu, very much.